changed is that people, that they don't have obviously like millions of people they influence like Oprah does, but they could have tens, hundreds, maybe even thousands, and you'll never know who they are. But they're important to their own little communities. So we're kind of entering this age of a micro-celebrity. And the way that I've tried to visualize this is that, and I've seen this happen time and time again. I've actually experienced it personally. If you guys follow me, you know the situation I went through with the homeless family. What's happening is that in networks and individuals, you might have individuals that only have a network of 20, 30, 40 people, and you have thousands of those people. Then you've got a few, so those would sort of be these number fours, right? Then you've got a few that have networks of thousands of people, and there's fewer of those. And for ideas, links, content, you name it, things to go viral, things to spread, every time I've seen one of them happen, I've seen this model be put in action. What happens is the thousands of people that have little influence and the hundreds of people that have a lot of influence all work together and are all talking about the same thing, and whatever that thing is ripples out. And eventually it spills out into other networks. It may start in one, it may start in Twitter, it may start on the web, but it eventually ripples outside of the web and into the mainstream media. And so both are really important. People that have a lot of influence with a lot of people, and people that have influence in small groups. So I talk about this term kind of jokingly, and I call it a web-leberty. And so I did a list, top 10 sites, kind of tongue-in-cheek, because the interesting thing about this topic is that there's a lot of folks out there that are kind of anti-personal brand. Now you're really into yourself. If you're thinking of yourself as a brand, you go stick up your ass and you're full of yourself. And the irony is that those people are working much harder at their own personal brands than anybody else in this room. Because really what it comes down to is if you're a human being, you have a personality, there are many, many similar characteristics to that of what a brand is. So I came up with this number 4. You stop thinking of yourself as a person years ago, now you're a brand. I wouldn't recommend getting carried away with this, and it is, you don't want to become full of yourself. But it is interesting. I mean, as you guys are in social networks, you can kind of see the personalities come up, and someone's kind of figured out a little niche to carve, right? Or they've come up with a little, some of us put cowboy hats on occasion, and they stand out, right? You're like, why does that feel like a cowboy hat? I live in Chicago. So here's a few people that I would categorize as these personal brands who have leveraged them very successfully. Does everyone know who Guy Kawasaki is? Because we're all on social media, right? And so he's one of the people that, because he's built up his personal brand, he's built up businesses with it. He's very influential in the entrepreneurial group. And the interesting thing about Guy is that not only did he start these ventures, but he uses his personal brand capital to fuel them. Twitter is he's now, 40,000 followers, something around that, right? I mean, how do you think he's promoting all the time? Any of his businesses, Truman's, right? He leverages his own personal brand that people identify with to actually build his products and services. I just said products. We all know who Robert Scoble is, right? Same thing. Robert's a personality. Started off with, interesting thing about Robert, and again, I see the debates all the time. Well, I've never heard of Robert Scoble. It doesn't matter if you've never heard of Robert Scoble, because Robert Scoble is really important. Interestingly enough, he was only important to tech people initially. Then he became important to social media people, and now the marketing people are listening to Robert Scoble. So he started off with one group, and now he's actually known by 3 different groups. It doesn't matter if my mom doesn't know who Robert Scoble is, right? So you've got Scoble, who has also built up his brand. He goes out there and he's himself. He's sort of affable and kind of jolly. Anybody know who Seth Godin is? Okay, same thing. I think this is when someone goes out and makes an action figure of you, then you know you've done something right in this whole kind of personal brand genre. I'm not sure. I think the unicorn actually came from his recent book, because he mentions the unicorn in the factory. But anyway, Seth is really, if you work in the marketing field, most people know who Seth Godin is. They know his books. And Seth is interesting because he built up a lot of awareness around his books, kind of the traditional way, but he's mastered social media specifically with blogging. He's not on every network, but he's really mastered blogging. And if you look at it, every day there's a post, right? And people have come to expect that. They want that. That's how they feel like they connect with stuff. Now he has his own network called Tribes, where a lot of people get together and they interact on that. And that's how he's built his personal brand. I think he also is synonymous with bald. But hey. So I came up with this. I like to always do 5 U's or B's or whatever, just so people can remember. So these are sort of the 5 B's of building your brand U.0, which is a fancy way of saying personal branding. And I talked about this notion called live streams. I did not coin that phrase, but I talk about it often. And what a live stream is you guys all have multiple of these. If you're in this room, basically anytime you're uploading to Flickr, anytime you're sending out a Twitter, an update, a status update, basically sending out streams of your life that goes out to maybe one network, maybe several. And so when they go out, they oftentimes intersect. A couple examples of this. We were just having a conversation over here about, well, okay, so I have Twitter linked to Facebook. It means that people, my Facebook community sees all my tweets. They don't see conversations. They don't see the @ but they do see anything I'm sending out. So they're kind of intersecting there. On my blog, I import my Flickr feed. I have a friend feed there, which imports all those other feeds. I have Twitter on there. So we're building all these manifestations of our personal live streams, and at some point they don't live in silos, right? They all kind of connect somehow. So it's this idea of we're kind of ubiquitous now. We can be anywhere and seemingly in multiple places. I kind of live that today, right, Bill? Right, between the Twitter stream and the live streaming and then reading off a piece of paper about the 20 different things I said today, and it seems like it's really 8 people, but it's only 1 in reality because I have multiple streams out there. So we can be everywhere at once, we can be ubiquitous, and we can have all these streams working. Now the interesting thing about this is that it actually poses a lot of challenges. And so if you take that first step and you publish or push out or facilitate multiple streams, that do intersect. Well, now you're at a point where you're managing what I call a social system. And it can get a little hairy because you can actually quickly lose control of your social system and create these planets that end up spinning off and dying, right? They become neglected and they're no longer part of your ecology. They're no longer part of your system. And so the art then becomes to not only sort of publish these streams, but now really figure out which ones matter to you in your system, take care of them, make them work for you, have a strategy behind it. So you have this social system, you want to be social, but you want to effectively manage all of that. And really they do kind of revolve around you. I mean, you're the one that's actually feeding all those things, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the social media is a wonderful thing. We can use it to help people, we can use it to do business in a more personal way. But at the end of the day, in reality, I mean, we're building these things, right? We kind of are at the center of it. And so we have to be very conscious. This is where it kind of dovetails with this idea of having a personal brand and building it, is that at some point if someone's seeing all these sort of dead, neglected areas, that reflects poorly on your own personality and your own personal brand, on you as an individual. Be interesting. This is Russell Davies, and he talks about this idea of being interesting. And one of the things that he does is that he just documents things that he sees. He documents, he takes a walk in the park and where he's been, he takes pictures, and he's an interesting person. And he's also interested in other people, which also helps quite a bit. But he's interesting, and so people want to find out more about him. So if you're looking to, if your objective is you want to start a business or you want to represent your organization and draw attention to it, being interesting actually does work. People are drawn to interesting people. And if you're interested back in them, that's even sort of a better combination. Another thing